Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton with Peyton Energetics, and I'm a Pleiadian channel. So in this week's Point of View, the Pleiadians wanted to talk to us about how our definition of time is changing. And this may seem like kind of a strange topic, but this is going to lay the groundwork for what they are going to talk about in the next Point of View, where they start talking to us about timelines and how to change your timeline. Because before we can dive into the fascinating subject of timelines, we have to understand a little bit about how our understanding of time is changing as we move into fifth dimensional energies. Now, as you know, we're all pretty familiar with how time functions in 3D or 4D, which is where most of us have been for a while now. And this is characterized by what we refer to as linear time. And that is just time as we have always known it, where there is a past, a present, and a future. And you really can't mix up the order of those in any way. So this is how time has always operated for us. But the interesting thing is, as the Pleiadians like to tell us, linear time only operates in 3D. So the rest of the galaxy is operating in a very different construct of time. And now that we are all in the fourth dimension, fourth density, a cool thing happens. We can use either the rules and the laws of 3D, or we can use the rules and the laws of 5D. So today we're going to talk about the difference between 3D time and 5D time, because the more we can function from the perspective of fifth dimensional time, the more we can start using fifth dimensional energies now. And time in 5D makes things so much easier. So let's start just by talking about the construct of time that we are all familiar with, which is 3D time. And linear time is one of the hallmarks of 3D, but it is essentially an illusion, which means it is just a collective agreement to experience reality in a certain way, where there's a past, a present, and a future. But that's not actually how time operates. So as we are moving into the fifth dimensional energies, we can use time differently. It gets much more flexible, because one of the things we are also familiar with in our normal understanding of time is that you have to go through a series of steps, right? For anything you want to do, you have to go from A to B to C. And you really can't mix those up. You can't skip a step and get the same result. And so what this means for us in 3D is that everything takes a long time. We are very much obsessed with how to get things done, the process, because in linear time, there's always a process. A way to get from the beginning point, wherever you are starting, to the goal you're trying to accomplish. And as most of us know, working in linear time is long and cumbersome because there's no shortcuts, right? You can't skip over a couple steps and get the same end result. So this is how we have always experienced time. And this is what our minds will default to. So how does this differ then from how we will be working with time as fifth dimensional beings? Well, according to the Pleiadians, as we move into the fifth dimensional energies, time gets much more flexible, much more elastic. It's no longer a series of rigid steps. So whereas in 3D, we have to go from A to B to C, in fifth dimensional energies, you can jump from A directly to Z without having to go through all those steps and tediousness in between. So you can start to see, as the guides say this, how this might sound really enticing. So one of the things that starts to become available to us as we start to consciously work with the fifth dimensional energies is that we work with time differently. We can skip directly to the end result without having to go through all of those long steps. So whereas in 3D, we arrange time in a straight line, the guides like to give the example of fifth dimensional time as being more like a ball. So imagine time as one of those disco balls that you see in the movies with all the different little pieces of glass. And time is moving from one piece of glass to another in 5D time. So you can jump from one piece of glass directly to a piece of glass on the other side of the ball without having to go through tons of steps in between. You just jump there. So this is how our understanding of time is starting to shift. So this is one of the reasons that the Pleiadians are always encouraging us to focus on the end result we want. Because most of us, we are still in that 3D default thinking. And what do we focus on and obsess about when we are trying to accomplish something in our life? We try to figure out how we're going to do it. But that is very 3D because that is focusing on the A, the B, and the C of having to go through a series of linear steps. So the Pleiadians have been, without us knowing it, training us to think like fifth dimensional beings by encouraging us to always just focus on the end result we're after. Let the universe figure out how it's going to happen. Because what they are doing as they have been planting these little breadcrumbs in our mind over the past couple of years is they're teaching us how to think as fifth dimensional beings, where you focus on what you want to accomplish and not how you're going to get there. Because in 5D, you let the universe bring you the how through synchronicity. Whereas in 3D, we have to plan it, otherwise we can't make it happen. So one way we start to move more into fifth dimensional thinking and taking advantage of the fifth dimensional energies that are available to us now is by stretching and playing with how we think of time. And this is a really important concept because as we start to let this sink into our minds, and it takes a second, the Pleiadians have had to explain this to me many, many times. But as you start to think about this consciously, just to remind yourself, just to focus on the end result, because what you do is you start training yourself to work with fifth dimensional energies, because the Pleiadians like to remind us we can work from either system now. We can work the old way in 3D, which is what most of the planet is doing, which is much harder, or we can take advantage of the fifth dimensional energies. We can start to create from fifth dimensional energies. So both systems are available to you now. We can do things the old way as we have always done them, or we can start to take advantage of the flexibility, the ease of fifth dimensional energies and use those rules instead. So this is what the Pleiadians wanted to share with us to just start to lay the groundwork for what they will be talking about next week, which is using this discussion in understanding timelines and how to jump timelines, which we love to talk about in the spiritual community. So that is this week's Pleiadian point of view. I hope it helps you. I'll see you soon. Bye.